Time's Rainbow. He imagined it like a poem, fashioned in an arc, a rainbow which leaves the ground at one end in tonal glory, passes through a gradual diminishing of colour until it is banded at its zenith in greys, and then curves back to earth, gathering colour again, until finally, resplendent and fully garbed, it touches the earth. Anyway, this is how it appeared to Julius, poetically, as he tried on this, his birthday, to make sense of his 104 years. He was sitting in some comfort in the garden of the house he'd lived in for the last 40 years, since he took retirement. A stone cottage in the Derbyshire uplands, with views across a valley. Through the open kitchen window, Martha was singing softly. He could make out the old tune, the first she had taught him. It was a partnership of utmost parity. She had a roof over her head, food in her belly, and the delights of a well-appointed studio, in exchange for nursing him, bathing and feeding him, and, most importantly, preparing him each day to continue to face the world. Full recompense for her uncomplaining care would be realized upon his final breath. Then all of this would be hers. The house was on account, so to speak, for her 15 years of devoted service. The emergence of the rainbow from the fertile earth at his birth was clear in his memory. Whether this was a delusion, partially built from photographs and 8mm films, or whether it was a vivid actuality imprinted on his 2-year-old senses, did not matter. He was in a buggy. His mother was leaning over him, and her long perfumed hair was brushing against his cheek. She had pushed him into a little clearing in the garden bushes, filled with the smell of jasmine and an almost blinding display of wild flowers of every hue. A butterfly, black with red edging, landed on the back of his hand and exercised its wings. There was a loud insect hum in the sweet, dense air. A song thrush, a few meters away, trilled a repeated phrase. The bird's song, translated into prophetic meaning, proclaimed, "You are born truly conscious, all senses nature-fueled, a newly minted, intricate part of the mosaic of existence." Well, that's what he liked to think it was singing, looking back. The umbilical closeness to his mother lasted until he went to school. She tended him with loving hands, gently grooming him to face each day, so that he was harmoniously balanced in body and spirit to venture out into the world. In his primary school years, there were moments still when he re-entered that reverie of oneness, drugged by the perfume of a lilac tree high in its branches, wading in a stream, his net full of water creatures which he returned after examination in the palm of his hand, rolling in the musk of leaf mould under trees in autumn, his eyes closed, sitting on the back steps with his mother containing him in her arms as the gathering storm of noise and flashing could be seen marching across the hills towards their house. The trembling fear as the sky cracked its brilliant whips all around them and the rain struck. Only then, dripping, fear having given way to exultation, did she lead him back inside. These events of lucid consciousness diminished through secondary school. Everything seemed to be taken up with the avoidance of bullying, the treadmill of lessons, the opening of his awareness of girls. Only during the holidays did he lean against a whispering tree, lie upon the pale grasses above the valley, or follow a novel course through the chest-high old man's baccy and ferns. He began writing poetry, as though in some way it might encourage these deep communions, or at least record them. He had, at the age of 18, a brief sensual hour with a girl of his age. Kisses, touches, nothing more. But he remembered the unfamiliar blind ecstasy of those minutes when he was lost in the tactile wonder of her. This feeling of being transported to the furthest limits of his senses was an echo of those early moments of transcendence. From university until the last working day of his life, he could count on one hand experiences which he could label profound in any way. The first meeting with his wife, the birth of his daughter, the teetering on the edge of death on a wintry mountain. Yet even these were enclosed vignettes, lacunae rather than brushes with the infinite. They led to awkward, painful poems, more a reflection of his disturbed sense of purposelessness than any celebration of an event. During the whole time, he scarcely thought of nature's place at the core of reality. Never of Gaia, hardly ever of the spiritual. He slowly grew the carapace of an urban dweller. Family, house maintenance, work in the library, and evenings in front of media filled his life. His poetry dried up completely. Despite this, unsolicited, heightened, sensory moments occasionally burgeoned in the wastelands of his straight-jacketed life. Momentary glimpses of extraordinary beauty in the mundane. But each one also carried a sad reminder of what was being lost. Even the trauma of his wife's hospitalized death and her burial in a cemetery lined by yew trees, those sacred sentries who oversee the soul's journey to rejoin the universal ocean of consciousness, did nothing to breach his sense of separation. Nor did the renewal of his bond with his daughter shake the walls of his incurious isolation from the world. When she succumbed, after a childless life, to the same cancer as her mother, at virtually the same age, he was alone. 5 years of near solitude followed. He spent them mostly indoors, venturing outside only to nod satisfaction at his gardener's fortnightly tending of the plants, receive parcels from the postwoman, and welcome the Meals on Wheels couple with their solicitous questions and constant smiles. Luckily, when he had the fall, they were in the house, sorting out his kitchen. Or perhaps he fell because they were sorting out his kitchen. Who can say? Result? Hospital. Broken hip. A return home and daily social service support from a care worker. This kind soul also brought the regional weekly newspaper for him. He scarcely read it, as he had no connection to the people and events around him. One day, though, she had circled a personal ad. "Someone looks right up your street," she said. He read, "Artist wishes to offer live-in care for an elderly person in exchange for board and lodging, which must include a large space for a studio." He phoned the number. "Hello," said a firm female voice. "Hello, I am an ancient ex-librarian with a studio," he said, and laughed. "Ha ha!" She joined him in laughter. "Let's talk." When she stood on his doorstep that first time, he had his first heart-elevating experience in years. Something in her frank eyes, the way she held her body, her firm hand clasp, and the slight chuckle in her voice when she spoke, created a pleasing frisson. They struck a deal within the hour. She would join him a month hence. Meanwhile, With his solicitor's help, he arranged her contract and engaged a tradesman to prepare the studio and the bedroom next to his. The summer day she moved in with her estate car full of artistic implements and materials, the windows and the doors were opened fully for the first time in decades. Light poured in at dawn and fled at dusk. There was time for the scents of the garden to fill the house during the day and hang in the air throughout the night. It took several weeks for Julius to be relaxed under Martha's care, to accept the intimate washes, the attention to the lingering bed sores after his operation, to her investigation in minute detail of what she called the bits and bobs of his entire body. He had asked her how she found such work. It could hardly be a joy. She stared at him steadfastly. One should try to make every act, big or small, difficult or easy, a victory on the path to goodness. I cared for both of my parents in Nigeria before they died. It was not a hardship for me. I gave back what they had given me. It was natural. My work as an artist filled me with the energy to care for them. Why England? Her expansive smile wrapped round him. I married an Englishman who was working in Lagos and came with him here to Derbyshire 3 years ago. It was not easy. There are not many Africans in these parts, and his own spirit was not as generous as I imagined. We parted a few months ago, but I'd fallen in love with these old hills. I thought I'd see what might turn up. I did cleaning jobs. The landlord started pressuring me to get out of the flat once my husband was gone. Then, in a moment of inspiration, I placed the advertisement. I'm so glad, he said emotionally. So glad. So am I. Now into his 90s, Martha coaxed him into walking a little. She would push his wheelchair into the garden and leave him reading there or dozing. She kept an eye on him from above as she worked in her studio. He made her his sole beneficiary. He began to have occasional lightning strikes of heightened awareness again. A huge Maybug in full armour seemed to drill out of a different dimension and jet inches past his eyes. It precipitated a poem. A wren landed on his slipper and pecked at something in the sheepskin, completely trusting him. He felt a silver birch's parchment bark under his fingers and listened to its whispers. He wrote down its message. Another poem. Increasingly, his senses engaged once more with the world in which he nestled. More poetry followed. Martha brought an animistic reverence to his home and garden. She sang old Hausa songs and played the kora and encouraged him to beat a string drum with a suede-covered stick. He joined her in the choruses once he'd learned and could approximate the pronunciation of the words. They played together in the orchard. He could swear the birds were joining in. She showed him each painting when it was complete before posting it off to Nigeria to her agent. Her work was selling. She banked the money in Lagos. The pieces were big, bold, magic realism, autobiographical depictions of her life in Nigeria. In them, she wove fantastical creatures and surreal elemental forces into everyday scenes of work and family life. Julius asked her if she wanted to go back to live there. No, I found peace and goodness here. Why spoil such a thing? After you leave me, I might think about it. Oh, you must. Sell the house and go back. You're still young. What is there for you here? She was still in her early 40s and so beautiful she could surely have any life she wanted. "Oh, Julius," she scolded him, "open your eyes. I'm in paradise." They spent his 100th birthday in the garden. She ordered a gourmet picnic from a reputable nearby town restaurant. They played all the songs she taught him. He read her his new poems. She clapped her hands after each one. Her eyes, wide with the pleasure of it, never left his face as he read them. Her special birthday gift was a painting. It was the only painting she ever did of a non-African subject. It was a portrait of him, sitting in the garden, surrounded by all manner of wildlife, birds in the air and on his shoulders, animals gambolling around his feet, a shower of flower petals falling like snow. It was all bathed by the golden light of an evening sun. She hung it on the wall opposite so he could see it from his pillow. It spoke to him, even at night. And today, on this, his 104th birthday, she had pushed his wheelchair into a space among the bushes in the garden. For over an hour, eyes closed, he had played with memories. She came out to sit beside him and put her hand on his as he closed his eyes again. Yes, his life had been a poem, fashioned in an arc, a rainbow which leaves the ground at one end in tonal glory, passes through a gradual diminishing of colour until it is banded at its zenith in greys, and then curves back to earth, gathering colour again, until finally resplendent and fully garbed, it touches the earth. As though her spirit was transmitting a mysterious force through her fingertips, he returned for the last time to the pushchair world of his babyhood, to that clearing in the garden, feeling his mother's hair on his cheek, the air filled with the scent of jasmine, and the song thrush trilling its repeated refrain. Well, that was Time's Rainbow. I hope you enjoyed it. I've written one or two stories recently with individuals in their autumn years, trying to make sense of their lives. I'll put them in a playlist, but in the meantime, listen to The Picnic and Door of Doors. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click the subscribe button, and I'm open to your thoughts and questions also. And if you want to read my novels, plays, poetry and Zen non-fiction, go to my website, www.jacksanger.com, and you can download everything for free. Or, if you wish, you can make a donation. So there we are. That's all for now, and I'll be back soon. Go in peace. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.